New Jersey's Rutgers University is the latest college to confirm that it will mandate the COVID-19 vaccine and require its students and staff to mask up this coming semester. According to a News Nation report, over 100 universities nationwide will adopt vaccine mandates for in-person instruction this fall. 61% of colleges recommending getting the shot, while 18% actually require it.
Meanwhile, a Kaiser Family Foundation poll published this week reveals many Americans, a third to be exact, believe the COVID vaccine killed thousands of people. According to the survey, roughly 2,000 people, 10%, responded that they think it's definitely true that the mRNA vaccine was responsible for death of otherwise healthy people, and 23% said it was probably true. Over on Fox News, host Jesse Waters accused Big Pharma and the government of trying to scare Americans into buying more COVID vaccines. Let's watch.
Pharmaceutical companies have a new line of boosters rolling out in the fall. Yes, older Americans or some Americans with comorbidities may need them, and that's fine. But CBS, owned by Viacom, a company that made a fortune during the pandemic when everybody was shut in watching TV, is doing free advertising for Pfizer and drumming up false fears. Pharmaceutical companies are getting paid and doctors get a cut from the boosters given. Only this time, the insurance companies foot the bill instead of us, Uncle Sam. But don't worry, Biden's giving pharmaceutical companies over $1 billion so uninsured Americans can get free shots. Now, we're beginning to wonder if this year's mutant variant scare tactic pushed on network TV is less about saving lives and more about lining corporate pockets.
So he's referencing there, obviously, this interview we talked about yesterday with Scott Gottlieb, who is a former FDA commissioner and also sits on the board of Pfizer, who was talking about the importance of getting boosted come the fall, even though, as I noted yesterday, they don't yet have out the booster that is correlated with the latest variant, which is purportedly as different from Omicron as Omicron was from the original strain. So we'll have to see. I don't think. I think it's a wild policy to still require not just vaccines but boosters for a campus population. It should be your own decision. To override it being your own decision, it would have to be that the public health rationale is so strong. But as we know, the main beneficiary of the vaccine is you, particularly if you're elderly or you fall into a certain, at-risk individual. Most people have some level of protection, although it might not hold up against this new variant. This is the only really group of people in America still who are under, a vaccine mandate are college kids who are, I'm sure that, of course, there are some college kids who have immunocompromised status, but overall, this is going to be like one of the least at risk of serious disease and death populations you could possibly have, and they're the ones under a vaccine mandate. It seems pretty backward to me.
What do you think about the poll that shows such a significant number of people believe that there have been thousands of deaths from the mRNA vaccine specifically? Yeah,
more interesting thing, like what people believe is what people believe. It's not the case that you can attribute a significant number of deaths to the vaccines themselves. I've always said I don't think the part of vaccines that a lot of mainstream voices got wrong was over promising on how effective they would be, not on that they're relatively safe. That still, as far as the evidence we can look at, still seems to be the case. It is true that if you're a teenage male, there is some degree of heightened risk of myocarditis, although others will make the argument that is also true of COVID itself. Mm-hmm. Although getting vaccinated does not stop you from getting COVID, so it's not like you cancel out the risk of one by doing the other, given that, again, COVID has been something that the overwhelming majority of people have.
But it does prevent the likelihood of hospitalization, which tends to lead to the longer-term health effects that we're talking about here, right? So
right.
But you started off by saying,
but people in that age group would be extremely unlikely to suffer a hospitalization anyway because of the age skew of COVID.
So you say people believe what they believe, but I think the concern that folks have had since the beginning of that is that there are media outlets that have fostered that particular belief. That,
yeah, I mean, you see a lot of it on social media that died suddenly, where everything we've covered, we've debunked them. The basketball player, other people.
I'm not talking about our media outlets, but there is this irony here. So, Jesse Waters there was framing it as a kind of again a liberal corporate media conspiracy. Of course, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News and The Hill are all corporate media. That is obviously true. So you have to say something more substantive than just corporate media, unless you're making a fundamental criticism of the influence of advertisers, which I think is legitimate and fair across the board. But specifically speaking, he says that CNN made all this money, MSNBC, I forget which, made all of this money during COVID. In fact, all of these institutions made a lot of money across COVID. Fox News saw a 38% revenue climb in 2021 with double-digit growth at Fox News Channel. Mm-hmm. Everybody was raking in the money during the pandemic when everybody was home in front of their TV. So I'm not clear what that point was. And moreover, specifically, a number of pharmaceutical companies also advertise over at Fox. So some of Fox's top advertisers include Johnson & Johnson, GlaxoSmithKline, and Novartis AG. Other top vaccine manufacturers like Pfizer and AstraZeneca ran hundreds of commercials on the network since the start of the year. This is an article from 2021. So
yeah, I don't think necessarily this is. I know some people on the right have done this. Objecting to or badgering certain companies that are in certain sectors. A lot of tech got this a lot. Like, oh, look how Facebook and Twitter and YouTube they're benefiting from the pandemic because more people are shut at home, watching their screens. And yes, that is true, but it's still given that we're all shut in watching our screens, it is better that these things exist, right? It's better that it's. I'm sure Amazon did really well during the pandemic, but I would have rather gone through the pandemic with Amazon.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to get to the root of what the actual criticism is here.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this is what I was saying in an earlier block where, it is very easy to weaponize legitimate concerns about bias in the media. But to say that the bias is somebody else's media but not mine. You know what I mean?
Okay, well, nobody is going to admit that their own self is biased. I mean, let's be real. You can't. You're not going to have a show on Fox News if you're just Fox News is terrible. Fox News is biased. Fox News is
then do independent
CNN
media.
and MSNBC don't do that either.
Do independent media. I'm very glad to have an independent podcast. I am an independent media for a lot of reasons, including that I have been very explicitly blacklisted by certain major media companies and all these other kinds of things. And I think it's very valuable because progressives aren't being heard on any of these channels, generally speaking. But also, at very least, make the generalized claim. If you're going to start talking about media bias, then be honest about it and don't use it just to say my opponent's media is biased but not mine. It just seems really empty. And it's not an argument that he has to make at all to make his broader case about vaccines.
I don't expect anyone, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, anyone to have any significant part of their coverage be about how their own institution is bad, because that's just not how the world works.
Well, it's not about the own institution being bad, but I will credit The Hill, for example, when we had our kerfuffle about Katie Halper. I had my belief about what happened. Katie Halper had their belief about what happened, and The Hill allowed me to come and say my piece on the show unrestricted. And but for that, I would not still be on the show. So I do think that there are different levels of these sorts of things, and people should be honest about them and know what their own limits are. But my fundamental point is, though, not that anybody is really free from any kind of influence, but that if you're making the case that your opponent is so biased and corrupted and you're under the identical pressures, then what are you even talking about?
Well, hang on, because they were calling out, they bring on Scott Gottlieb as an expert to talk about this, and he is literally on the board of Pfizer, which is often not disclosed.
Yeah, they should disclose that.
Absolutely. So he got to set, and he got to set that he was FDA commissioner, and he was substantially responsible for the rules for what drugs get to go to market.
I completely agree.
Now he works for Pfizer.
But Jesse Waters just sat there,
and he's out there saying, you college students who may not be at significant risk, boosters are coming.
Robby, Jesse Waters just sat there and listed all of these advertisers. He said CNN made a lot of money during the pandemic, and it had all of these advertisers that were pharmaceutical companies, and that's why it's biased.
Yeah,
and if that's your point, then you probably shouldn't be making that point from the perspective of Fox News.
Fair
That's
enough.
all I'm saying.
I don't care about that.
Okay.
I guess that does it for us for today. Tomorrow on Rising, Briahna and I will be back for another amazing edition of our show. It'll be the post-debate episode of our show, right? The debate's tonight.
We'll have lots to talk about.
We will both be watching that and consuming and enjoying the content there, and we will be back tomorrow to discuss it with you.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Do you have a specific debate-watching cocktail?
I think I'm going to try to stay clear-headed tonight because there's going to be a lot going on. Generally speaking, I would say a tequila soda with lime. You?
I often watch the debate at my friend Peter Suderman's house, a colleague of mine at Reason, and he makes delicious craft cocktails. He's got me really into Negronis, so that's usually
I do like
the
Negronis.
debate watching cocktail.
All right.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.